Hi everybody, just checking sound. Sam, can you hear me alright? We've got sound coming through loud and clear. Sam working? Yeah. Alright, fantastic. Welcome to you. We are just getting set up here in a very packed office space in Bristol, in the Scottlogic offices. Yes, Chris, it is busy here. Really nice to see you this evening. Thank you for joining us. We'll mute the sound very shortly. We just kind of wanted you to get a flavour of what's going on here this evening. So bear with us 1 second and we'll get things going. You're right. Another row of chairs is going to appear at the front. So, magically. So do not fear. So yeah, if you can play. And settle down, and then we'll get going. So for those of you that are new, I'm muted. Okay, thanks, Chris. I might be muted. I'm coming through now. All right. Yeah. Thanks for the tech support at home. Yeah, great. I'll just give you an idea of what's going on here. So here's Sam. Give us a wave, Sam. We got me and Sam here doing the online tech support, and as you can see in the other camera, we've got a whole bunch of people here. We've got about 40 people here. So for those of you that are new to an online Green Tech Southwest, we love a chatty feed. Please introduce yourself. We're also projecting all of the chat and what's going on at the back of the room. You might just be able to see it in the other screen there at the back. So we're trying something a little bit new. So yeah, please introduce yourself. Use the chat feed. It's the best way we've got for getting people to connect with one another. Ellen is just getting set up now, and we're going to switch that camera around. Yes. So there we go. Fantastic. So now we're seeing the front of the room, and we're just seeing everyone get set up. All right, so I'm going to go on mute. Give us a couple of minutes whilst we get everything set up and going. And yeah, please introduce yourself in the chat and make use of the chat feed. And I'll be here the whole time. So if there's anything that pops up, if you can't hear us, if you can't see things, let us know. Me and Sam are here monitoring everything to make sure it's working. But yeah, hope you have a really nice time. Thank you all so much for joining us. And yeah, we'll get started now. So I'm gonna zip off, and we'll just keep you with the main group.
Sam, is my mic working? Or... Okay, cool. Oops, share screen. Sorry, the suspense. Ooh. Right. Oh. Hello. Can everyone hear me okay? Perfect. Do you want to come up and comedy? So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for spending your evening with us. This is our 40th event of Green Tech Southwest. So yeah, really happy to have you all here. We want to say a special thank you to our sponsors, Scottlogic. We've obviously got the pleasure of Ollie, the Sustainable Tech Director, doing a talk for us today as well. And then also special thank you to Ed at Discourse. He'll be introducing himself a bit later as well. And then Simon at Crystal, and of course our sponsors AdLib as well. So yeah, I'll just quickly tell you a bit about us, and then we'll get to the good stuff. Oh, sorry, so obviously skipped ahead. Would anyone like to come up to the front to sit down, or?
If anyone's not seeing the slides, now is your moment.
But there's absolutely no pressure. If you're comfortable, situated, then do not worry. No, cool. So yeah, so this is, we are your organisers. You've definitely seen us floating or flapping around today. It's not about us, so we'll be round from Mingle later if you do want to come say hello. We've also got some fantastic volunteers floating around. We've got our AV saviour, Sam, who is, yeah, gives us a lot of peace of mind. And then we've got Tariq as well, who is usually on the front desk. So yeah, so just a little bit about us. So we're Green Tech Southwest. Many of you know us. I see a lot of familiar faces. If you're new here, we basically just aim to showcase a variety of people using tech to solve different sustainability problems using ingenious methods. We want to create a safe space, a fun space. So the main thing is just be really nice to each other and yeah, just listen to each other's opinions. We also have a website, thanks to wonderful Hannah. We've documented every single talk that we've had, and I don't know if you heard, but we've done 40. So yeah, they'll all be up on the website once the events are done. We've got the event videos, all the links and stuff that were shared. So yeah, it's quite a good resource. So feel free to check that out as well. I'll make sure this talk's available sometime over the weekend. We will be doing 60-second intros. Obviously, it's not just about the speakers; it's also about the community as a whole. So, if you've got, if you've got something you want to say, something you want to share, this is a great opportunity to just do like a humble brag. If you're working on a project or anything like that, this is a good opportunity to basically take the stage. So, anyone volunteers? I know Ed would like to say a quick word. Do you want to kick us off, or yeah, go on, get the ball rolling.
Thanks,
I think this. Oh, sorry, yeah.
All right. Hi. Nice to meet you all. My name's Ed. I am the MD and the founder at the Discourse, which is a design agency.
Sorry, Mike.
Bit closer.
Which is a design agency and certified B Corporation. We are on a mission to enable the change makers of this world, people like you, to achieve that. We partner with businesses predominantly in green tech and consultancy, helping them to grow, to build visibility, to attract investment, and ultimately to communicate through brand, the web, and content. We are very proud sponsors of Green Tech Southwest. We love the work that these guys do, and we're very passionate about the sector. What have I got to ask? We're doing some research at the moment into green tech, and more specifically the challenges that the sector is facing, and the kind of barriers that business and founders have to growth, and more generally the wider adoption of green technology. If anyone is interested in speaking to us about that and potentially featuring in the content that we produce off the back of it, then come and introduce yourself. Love to find out more about what you're doing and the work you're involved in. Yeah, that's about it from me. I hope you all enjoy the rest of the evening, and yeah, thanks for coming.
Lovely stuff. Did I see any more hands shoot up there? Amazing. Sorry, so I forgot to mention we've got an online audience as well. So this sort of double team it, then
sure.
Everyone's covered basically.
Hey there. So I'm Martin. I work for a little pre-seed startup called InRange. We are putting solar panels on top of commercial rooftops. I'm a software engineer. I'm the lead software engineer in that company. I'm interested in talking to anyone here about solar energy and energy markets in the UK. I'm quite new to this space. I hadn't previously worked in energy before October of last year, so still finding my feet. But if you've got any experience in particularly things like exporting energy from one site and selling it to another, and PPAs and all this kind of good stuff, we'd love to have a conversation with you. Or if you're interested in working for a software company that's trying to put more solar panels on more commercial rooftops, come and speak to me. We're not hiring yet, but we are going to close more funding at some point, at which point we will suddenly be hiring. And so we'd love to speak to you. That's it.
Brilliant, thank you. Any other? Yes, happy pop. So it's a bit of a dance. So yeah, this is for online, and this is speaking the room.
Hi, my name's Greg. I work for a company called Resync. It's our logo. First rule of marketing: always put the company name with the logo. We're pre-seed startup. We're about 6 months old. We're testing out a concept with an open source project, which is what I want to raise tonight. The project is called Ether. Ether spelled A-E-T-H-E-R. Ether is the personification of the Greek god of the upper atmosphere, which kind of makes sense, really. What Ether's doing is we're testing out this concept of measuring real-time consumption-based carbon emissions from bare metal servers. It has been installed. It seems to be working quite well, but we're looking for feedback, committers, obviously, and just generally, is this a good or a bad idea? As a pre-seed startup, 7 months in, we've managed to pivot once, which I think is fairly good going. Let's see what happens the next 7 months, but thank you.
Thank you so much. I'll make sure to grab all your details at the end, because what I'll do is I'll write up so that you can share them all. Any other volunteers? Oh, yes. You tried to stick it back down there. Sorry. So yeah, it's just for the online people, and this is for the room.
Hello, everyone. My name is Daniel Sheen. I work at the local University of Bristol. I've been there since 2010, researching sustainability of digital media. We first worked with The Guardian, then with the BBC. And so we calculated how much carbon is released when you're browsing, when you're watching the news with The Guardian, or when you're watching BBC iPlayer content. We then built a tool called Dimpact, which is now used by Netflix and Spotify and many other of the world's largest media organizations. I see some of my students here. I teach software engineering and cloud computing and sustainable computing there. Always interested in working with the local community and global community in green tech. I just started a new research project called Candice. This one has Netflix, Sony, and Meta as partners, and Akamai and BT. Some of you might recognize those companies. And I'm looking for people to work with us. We've got a fully funded PhD studentship for 4 years. And we're looking for a researcher with a tech background to work with us at the University of Bristol. Really fantastic, exciting project. We're trying to make we're creating the knowledge base that puts the decarbonization of digital media on a more robust footing. At the moment, the methods that are being used to estimate the potential that comes from changes to the digital services, all sorts of stakeholders are relevant here. They're too naive, they're too simplistic, and we already know that the tech sector is failing its net zero goals, and we want to change that. So come and work with us.
Brilliant. So, got time for a few more? Yes. Oh, sorry, and then after. Two-man job, unfortunately. There you go.
Hello, I'm Matt. I quit my job on Tuesday. I'm hoping sometime in the next year to co-found something in the net zero space. I'm a software engineer with 10 years experience. I'm looking for someone who is interested in co-founding something, ideally someone with industry experience in energy management or retrofitting, all the good things that get talked about at these kind of talks. If you know someone who is in that space and looking to start something from 0 to 1, or you are one of those people, then please talk to me. I'm very scared of public speaking.
Brilliant. So I think, yeah, Hannah, we'll have a very own Hannah. You know what to do.
Cool. I am reading out a 60-second intro on behalf of Chris, who is joining us online tonight from Cambridgeshire. So Chris has been a really long time supporter of Green Tech Southwest, and he runs his own meetup community called Working in Sustainable Technology, which has a very similar kind of format to us. There's an online presence, but also it's all recorded and is in person as well. He wanted to come online, but we're having a little bit of a tech issue with getting people at home online tonight. So he wanted us to tell you that he's got a meetup coming on June the 6th, all about CO2 removals. And if you're kind of into this scene and you're into these vibes, then definitely check out his group. And Chris, you're awesome. We're sorry that we can't get you on screen, but we love that you're watching from home with about 20 other people this evening. So to everyone at home, thank you for being with us.
Any other volunteers or? No, amazing. Well, thanks to everyone who came up and did a 60-second intro. Just doing one last little shout out on behalf of our sponsors, Crystal, as well. So they're the UK's largest independent web hosting company who run on 100% renewable energy. They're B Corps, and they've also recently planted 5 million trees. If you're stuck in a contract and you'd like to get out, you've noticed maybe some beer mats sort of dotted around the place, just scan the QR code, mention us, and they'll help you out. So that's that. Upcoming events of interest. So many of you will know about Climate Action Tech. So yeah, they're just like a great source, a huge community of just wonderful tech and climate action individuals. They host a number of amazing events, and they also run Branch magazine, who we've actually had a talk with last year, I believe. So that'll be up on our website as well if you wanted to check that out. But yeah, they've got a new issue out, so definitely worth checking out. And then a couple of other events of interest. So Climate Action Breakfast is climate and nature action on a shoestring. So that is at 10 a.m. on Wednesday the 15th. I'll make sure this is all available on our website as well, so you can find the links through that. And then we've got Service Design Bristol, it's the 4th one on Thursday the 23rd of May, and then Pixel Pioneers Friday the 14th of June. So make sure you check them out. Like I said, I'll make them all available. Cool. So our next speaker-led event is happening in July on Thursday. We're having Sarah Telehun, who has done a talk for us before, and she's absolutely fantastic. So really looking forward to having her back. And then also Jeff Cars. So yeah, make sure more information will be sent around about that. So keep your eyes peeled. Really looking forward to that. It'll be another hybrid event. And then yes, your feedback means a lot to us. So don't be shy, whether it's good, bad. We want to make sure these events are still good for you and working. So do let us know. Our socials will all be shared as well. So now to the main event. So Hannah. Yeah.
We've got a question from online.
Oh yeah.
Chris, who's quit your job. Someone's asking what your surname is. Matt. Okay, yeah. So we missed this.
The surname is Bessie, B-E-S-S-E-Y.
Could you read it? Could you say it for us?
Yes. So Bessie, B-E-S-S-E-Y.
Yes.
Matt Bessie.
Confusingly, there's another Matt Bessie who's also a software engineer that lives in California. This is me.
Okay, not Californian Matt, Bristol Matt.
Bristol Matt.
I will make sure to get your details, and we can share them on the chat as well, Hannah. So cool. So on to the main event. You've probably seen enough of me. So really excited to introduce Oliver, the Sustainable Tech Director of Scottlogic. So what we'll do is click that onto you.
Yes, got David joining me as well. So
Perfect.
have you got a second one of these?
Yeah, yes, we do. I will get that.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Sorry, David. I will just get your slides shared.
Well, firstly, welcome to Scottlogic Bristol. It's great to see some of you returning again. We hosted the last one. We're happy to host and happy to continue hosting all the while it works out well. We don't outgrow our space, so our space is not massive, as you can see, but hopefully you enjoy spending this evening here. So yeah, I'm Oliver Cronk. David?
Yep, David Rees.
So we're here to talk to you a bit about some of the things we're doing in the sustainable tech space. As Ellen said, my role is tech director at Scottlogic, principally looking at sustainable technology, looking at other research as well, but predominantly looking at the sustainable technology space. And we're going to talk to you about tonight is something we've open sourced earlier in the year called the Tech Carbon Standard. And also we're giving you a bit of an exclusive preview tonight of what's coming next from our team, which is an estimator or a mapping tool that supports the Tech Carbon Standard. So I'll come on to that through the talk later. So a bit about me. So my background, I actually spent 4 or 5 years at energy and climate consultancy in the noughties, up to 2009. And the main reason I left was unfortunately the financial crisis of 2008 stopped the government spending an awful lot of money on tech solutions for sustainable challenges. So a lot of the work I was doing for DEFRA and Environment Agency and so on and so forth, unfortunately, a lot of the funding stopped. And at that point, I actually flipped and went and worked in the energy sector when I worked in electricity. So the person, I can't remember who it was, who was interested in talking about electricity. I think we may even have chatted last time. So yes, there's a network I can certainly introduce you in that space in terms of energy, certainly in terms of energy trading and balancing all that sort of exciting stuff, if you're an energy geek like me. So yeah, and then since then have done a number of roles. One of the other things I lead is a community and podcast called Architect Tomorrow. This topic of sustainable technology comes up a lot on that podcast. And yeah, so Scottlogic is a B Corp, and we're a software and data engineering consultancy predominantly. So we build software for predominantly large financial services institutions and large government departments. And we realized that as much as we were doing as much as we could ourselves with a net zero plan and a target and implementing improvements, we realized that we're a relatively small organization, 500 people, and actually the most of our impact could be felt through actually helping our clients reduce their footprint of their software and their technology. So that's why myself and David's part of the team as well are looking at that space, because we want to inject that into our day-to-day. So all of the work we do, it becomes more sustainable, but also we help clients with that journey to more sustainable technology, as we'll talk about in a moment. And David, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, my background's mostly in sort of product design, UX, UI, designed all sorts of things. I was saying earlier, I was designing chimneys many years ago, of all things. Somebody's got to do it. I've been Scottlogic for nearly a year now, but the last 6 months I've been focused on the sustainability team. So we've been developing this technology carbon standard, which we're sharing tonight. So that's been really my main focus last few months. It's been quite a learning journey because I'm kind of new to the space as well myself. So yeah, it's been a bumpy ride, but it's been interesting.
Thanks, David. And so I'd like to start with a bit of audience participation, if that's okay. So where are you? I guess there's some questions here around where you are in your sort of sustainability journey personally. Can I get a show of hands? How many of you are kind of trying to do your bit by using a reusable water bottle? Okay. How many of you are trying to recycle as much as you can? Okay. How many of you drive? Okay. Keep your hands up if you leave your car running when you get home. Just leave it on the drive running when you go to bed. No? Oh, that's weird, because it's kind of how we're running a lot of our technology, right? We're just running it 24/7, regardless of whether it actually needs to be running or not. So I guess the reason I ask those silly questions is I think we do some strange things in the tech space, right? I think we've optimized sort of performance and security and scalability and all these sorts of things at the expense of efficiency and doing some of the more smart things we would do around the home. We wouldn't leave the oven running in our house after we've cooked dinner. Yet we do the same sort of thing with technology, with servers and so on and so forth. And I appreciate cloud and other things like that are helping to a degree, but it's not a holy grail. So I guess another show of hands of how many of you have thought about the impacts of your technology usage? Great. Okay, cool. So I give this talk to a range of different audiences, and so I like to ask that question because it depends on then how much I deep dive into this the next couple of slides. But I don't feel I need to in this audience. So I think from from the audience I know from previous events of the series, you're all pretty clued up in this space. So I'm not going to, like, you know, essentially sing to the choir, as it were. But I guess I will just reinforce some points around. I think in general we're pretty oblivious to the, you know, tapping on our phone and using devices. We're pretty unaware of, or the majority, I would say, of the public is unaware of what really is going on when they're using these services. Right? They don't appreciate what energy went in and materials went into creating their device in the first place. They don't think about the impacts of changing that device every year, 18 months, 2 years, because they've kind of been, you know, bombarded by marketing that's what they should do. They don't think about the amount of electricity that the services that they're consuming. It's just all hidden, right? It's out sight and out of mind. And I think increasingly in the tech space, we're also getting like that, right? Because if you can consume a cloud service, you're no longer paying the electricity bill, or your company isn't paying the electricity bill anymore. There's a decoupling, a disconnection between the direct physical impacts of your technology usage and, you know, and then tech you're running. So there's this two-way street, right? The digital experience has physical impacts that I think a lot of people don't really understand. But like I say, I'm not going to dwell too much on this. I'd like to ask this question as well. Show of hands, who has come across the Sustainable Development Goals? Amazing. I have to say this is great, because I think that's the biggest percentage of show of hands I've ever had in a talk. I sometimes get a couple of people, or a kind of small number of hands go up. So that's amazing that the vast majority of the rooms put their hand up. So I don't need to tell you what these are. But what we did earlier in the year was we mapped them. I mean, we mapped them not just the environmental ones, we mapped them to the people ones as well, but I don't have time to go into that as well tonight. But what I wanted to do was just quickly highlight that what we're trying to do is raise awareness and create a common sort of approach to thinking about all the impacts that technology has on the environment, not just the energy consumption side, which I think the tech sector is massively over-indexing. You know, they're just saying, like, move to the cloud because it uses renewable energy, and the clean and affordable energy SDG 7 is kind of done. Yeah, we're done because we're using renewable energy. Unfortunately, there's this whole other side of the picture, right, which many of you will probably be aware of. The embodied carbon, particularly for consumer devices, makes up 80% often or more of the impact of technology. It's the amount of energy that was used to create that device, the materials, the mining and the transport and the decommissioning and disposal of devices makes up, you know, more of the impact than the actual usage. Yet we focus an awful lot on the electricity, and is the electricity clean? And if the electricity is clean, we're done. So what we're on kind of a mission to do is get people to think bigger picture about what the broader impacts of tech's impacts are, because there's all the things around, you know, water impacts and land usage from data centers, you know, data centers in water contested regions, you know, arid parts of the world where data centers are coming up, creates problems for agriculture and other water, you know, water usage. So, like I say, I'm not going to bang on about this. I'm in danger of doing so. So let me move on swiftly, and just say, look, when it comes to sustainability, we like to think, and I appreciate this, you may not be able to see the slide at the back, so I'll just quickly kind of run through some of it. What we've tried to do is take sustainability when it comes to technology and try and do a really big picture view on it. There's a few reasons for this. One is, unfortunately, not everyone cares about the environment. I wish they did, because we're probably a far better place, right? But you have to appeal to multiple different stakeholder levers. And for me, when I go in and have conversations with our clients, sometimes what will win some stakeholders over is just a bottom line saving of money. You know, and what I look for is a win-win-win approach, where we save the company money because we do things more efficiently. We reduce the security issues or other legacy technology challenges or other things, you know, technical debt or availability of skills and supportability or some other sort of non-functional problem. And we also look to reduce the impact on the environment as well. So can we try and find that really nice sort of approach, architecturally or strategically, that takes companies on this pathway to what I'd say is holistic sustainability rather than just environmental sustainability, because that gets more people on board, it gets more people behind the initiative, it generally gets it more funding and more traction because you're ticking more boxes along the way. The other thing about this picture is there's a circle here called Carbon Aware, which is a bit of a loaded term, and actually Hannah and I were doing a podcast all about Carbon Aware and Grid Aware earlier, so do look out for that, and that comes out in a few weeks' time. But the reason I also have carbon on here as a circle is that's just, of course, one consideration in this picture. There's the broader environmental and green challenges. So, Tech Carbon Standard. So, it's available at techcarbonstandard.org, and it looks like, oh, actually, sorry, no, it doesn't look like that. I'm going to hand over to David.
Okay, thank you. Got you out there. So yeah, first thing I want to start with before we sort of dive into showing it is why we came up with it, why we went about doing this work. I I believe the project actually started with us looking at the dev operations and the dev cycle.
Yeah, so we did a fair amount of research looking at what was available on the market, and what we couldn't find was a nice sort of simplistic view of technology's impacts on the planet. And so yeah, we started off looking, because we're software engineers, we started looking at the software development lifecycle, but it broadened out.
Yeah, so that's where it started. And yeah, realized that there's not really much out there. And as we kind of started trying to work this out and going deeper, our kind of boundaries just kept expanding. We ended up kind of reaching further and further across the entire organization and really the entire technology stack. Everything from the embodied carbon to the laptops, the monitors, right through to the end product, what that web service is or web app is. So the idea really was to kind of collate all this information and research we've done, create some kind of signposting to all the things we found, ideally the good stuff, and kind of ignore the bad stuff, the greenwashing. So we wanted to just create this collection of information, resources, but also key thing for us was trying to standardize that information, actually create a taxonomy, trying to make it all consistent language. So if we talk to multiple companies and multiple companies talk to other companies, they're all talking the same thing, all the same, it's the same structure, same taxonomy. When one person says this, they know what they're talking about. Because at the moment, it's just so inconsistent. Yep. So yeah, what is it? Well, I'm going to break it up a little bit. So first of all, there's 3 parts to it. Upstream, operational, downstream. So the upstream is the stuff that typically your embodied carbon. So these are the things that you would buy as an organization. This is your laptops, your printers, your monitors. The operational part is actually operating day-to-day operations. So what energy are you using to do your jobs? So again, that's using your laptops. So that is the energy you're consuming to provide the service or products you're producing. And finally, downstream is the end product, right? Well, that's the output of what you produce. So upstream, one thing a lot of people forget typically of upstream emissions is that software also has an embodied carbon. It's not just our physical products, but to produce a piece of software that has time and energy put in it to produce that software. Of course, the more people that use it, then the attributional cost of that is better. Then we've got the obvious stuff. So your laptops, your printers, your hardware, but also networking infrastructure. So in an office, we've got Wi-Fi access points, we've got switches, routers, all sorts. All of that is embodied carbon. It's all there. And of course, if you've got servers, storage devices on-prem as well, this part counts that embodied carbon again. So operational, we've got 2 distinct sections for this. The first one is direct. So this really applies to the things that the organization pays electricity for. So you're paying for electricity to power these devices. So again, this goes back to user devices, laptops, monitors, that networking infrastructure we just talked about, and of course the servers and storage you're running on-prem. So all of the actual energy you are paying for to run that stuff. We've also got generators there as well. It's kind of a weird one, but it's just there to sort of cover some edge cases. Okay, then there's the indirect stuff. So these are the services you buy in. So cloud services being the obvious one. You're not paying electricity bill for that stuff, but somewhere you're probably using a cloud service. That cloud service is consuming energy, and that's what we try to count into operational. There's also things like SaaS as well. Going too fast again.
Sorry.
SaaS, all the software you're using as a service, all of these again have a cost to running, and again that's where we count it. It's under this section. And finally, managed services kind of covers many things, but any kind of how do you describe it? Any kind of other service you're using that isn't necessarily cloud, but you're using a managed server somewhere that someone's providing that service. It's captured here. Finally, we have the downstream. So when you have a website or a web application, the users that are using it on their devices, they're using energy as well. So if you make that software efficient, and you're reducing the energy load. So again, another consideration. And a part of that, we've also got network data transfer. So if your services are consuming lots of data, that's putting more energy use into running the network. We've also got downstream infrastructure on there, which currently isn't actually on the website. This covers all the other things like IoT or even other servers, servers that are consuming your services. Finally, we just categorized things just to kind of make it easier. Again, this goes back to taxonomy and this kind of periodic table sort of idea. So we kind of labeled things up together to kind of make it a little bit easier. And we've attached a number to it as well. The numbers relate back to GHG protocol. So if you know the GHG protocols, that's how it kind of...
I was just going to ask, show of hands, how many people are familiar with the GHG protocol?
Yeah.
Well, less than you in SDGs, that's surprising. Okay. So just a quick one on that one, won't spend too long, but it's basically a way of classifying an organization's emissions into different scopes. So scope 1 is if you have like a heating system that burns gas or you know, some kind of fossil fuel or energy source that creates emissions, those are direct emissions. And so in tech, the only ones of those really are where you have backup power generators. You might have a diesel backup power generator, and that's scope 1 thing. Scope 2 is electricity. It's kind of like direct emissions. So that's things like the servers or user devices that you're running yourself. And then scope 3 is your supply chain, your kind of purchased goods and services. And so those are your kind of the hardware and the infrastructure that you buy, and the cloud type services or managed services that you run, or also the sort of downstream impacts as well. So that's why we've mapped it, because the idea of this standard is to bring together two stakeholders, to bring together the chief sustainability officer and their team, and bring together the technology team, and sort of have an asset or a taxonomy, a structure that allows those two teams to kind of come together and talk a common language and start to map out what their impacts are.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. So as well as that general overview of things, the Tech Carbon Standard website goes into a lot of depth in each of those categories and explains a little bit more about what we sort of include in that. We also go into depth on sort of guidance, methodology, data, sources of information to help you sort of calculate, figure this out for yourself. So we've got resources on there which link to other places, which give you, again, more information. There's nothing really new on the website. It's just our collection of stuff that we found that is useful and is good. So we just kind of pull it all together, signpost people to all this information, and trying to just condense it into something that's hopefully useful. Yeah, next.
I've just seen in the comments someone said they didn't understand the term greenhouse protocol. Sorry if I said greenhouse protocol. I'm pretty sure I meant to say greenhouse gas protocol. Apologies if I didn't say the gas.
Okay, so recently, I think we've launched it. Is it live yet?
It's not quite live.
Okay.
We're still putting final tweaks, but we're very close to putting this live. But yeah.
Okay, so we've built a tool, carbon estimator tool. The idea of this is for, I should have put a website on there. We've got a website, forget it. The idea of this is for organizations to enter in some very high level data, very, very high level data, and it basically will produce a carbon estimate, and it gives you a breakdown, and it breaks it down according to the TCS, all those categories we just talked about. The estimates are very, very loose. They are very, very high level, so they're not really it's not an auditing tool or a reporting tool. It's just to kind of engage and start a conversation and start to think about, okay, wow, my cloud is really big. I should do something about that. That's all it's really about. Yeah. You really can't see that. I knew that was going to be bad.
But it's essentially a form that asks questions like, how many people do you have in your organization? What sector are you in? How much cloud do you have if you know? How many end users do you have of your website or web applications? It's sort of basic questions about your technology estate, essentially.
Yeah, as you can see, it's not a big form.
It's one page.
It is one page. So yeah, it's very, very simplified. But off the back of that, we produce the lovely image, tree map, which just basically highlights all the different pieces that we talked about in the TCS and kind of highlights where potentially you've got concerns. I say potentially got concerns because if you've got laptops because your employees need laptops, there's not really much you can do about that because you need laptops, right? So you didn't necessarily want to focus on the biggest square necessarily, but it's just there to kind of give you context about where things are, where you can find your way around.
I think crucially what this does is it provides a tool that fights against some of the greenwashing that's going on in the tech industry, right? That tells you that all you need to worry about is move things to cloud and you're kind of done. It shows you what the significant areas are that you need to think about. So David's point about, you need laptops is valid, but what can you do to extend the life of those laptops so that you're reducing the embodied carbon that's associated with the hardware? So for some of our clients, it is massively their end user hardware estate is where the emissions are. For other clients, it's actually downstream because they offer a big B2C type service. Others, it's they have lots of infrastructure. They run lots of high performance compute, or they run lots of AI, and therefore it's lots of back end servers that is where the estate is. Perhaps particularly if they're a startup with a small number of employees but a large amount of cloud compute going on. So the point of this is it helps an organization understand where its big problem area is that it needs to go and optimize.
So with the carbon estimator tool, like I said, it's a very high level, very abstracted sort of idea of where things are. Ideally, once you've got that information, you can go a little bit deeper and actually start investigating things a bit more closely, actually look a bit more specifically into what you actually have got and what you are running. So this is actually an example. We recently mapped and measured, well, I say measured, very roughly measured, beer mat estimates, we called it, the Green Web Foundation platform. So the Green Web data sets, CO2JS, etc. And this is the result, basically. So again, it's a very high level. We've managed to really kind of get some numbers on things. So we've got a total just over 1,000 kilograms of CO2 per year for the entire Green Web platform. And you'll see the obvious thing here is the user hardware being 62%, big blue square. It's a small organization, yet so much of their carbon is just coming from just a few laptops and monitors. It's really interesting until you do it and you realize what it actually looks like. And that's the point of this visualization.
I think what's interesting about this, and I don't obviously want to speak too much on behalf of Green Web Foundation. I know Hannah's here and she'll perhaps slap me, but I think this shows Green Web Foundation is clearly practicing what it preaches, even though they have quite a lot of traffic to their downstream system. They offer an API and they store data sets online. That's clearly running. They practice what they preach, and they're running that on low carbon, which means even though they've got quite a lot of usage, talking about millions of usage a month. It's actually the end user hardware highlighted that is the challenge. Now, of course, this picture will look different depending on what your organization looks like. If you've got more servers, I don't think Green Web Foundation has any on-prem, for example, does it? It's all cloud. So there's no there's no kind of real on-prem stuff going on here. It's all cloud and it's all end user devices. So the nice thing about this though is it just provides a quick visual that says, okay, where do we start? What's the sort of big elephant in the room that we need to tackle first?
Yeah, I think it's really testament to GWF as well. When you look at cloud services at 3%, that's because all their cloud services are running on green energy. They've actually made that decision and then made the effort to do that, and it shows. Like it's testament to what they're doing. So yeah, great work.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, look, we full disclosure, I had hoped that we'd actually be able to launch the tool, but we're still fine-tuning it. I mean, one of the things we don't want to do is put out a tool that confuses people or gives people results that are potentially misleading, misguiding. So full disclosure, what's delaying us is we want to do another round of testing on it and validate it. So you may have seen there have been some quite high-profile organizations that have conveniently published their tech emissions, like ABN AMRO, for example, massive Dutch bank. They publish their full emissions information. And what we're going to be doing is using organizations like that have gone public with their emissions, putting in their high-level information and seeing how close the tool gets to roughly outlining what emissions are. So that's why we could be classic tech startup style and just chuck something out and treat all of our users as alpha testers. We're not going to do that. We want to launch a beta rather than an alpha. So we're doing a final stage of refinement before it gets live, but it's imminent. So we're talking weeks rather than months. And so look, it's open source, and the tech carbon standard is Creative Commons, and we'd love for other people to get involved. I think today we managed to twist Hannah's arm into becoming a committer of the project. So thank you, Hannah, for that. But we'd love to do more. And it was great to hear the University of Bristol was in the room. Was that right? So we'd love to talk to you about potentially getting involved in some way as well. And we're publishing quite a lot of stuff on the blog as well. But yeah, if you want to get involved in the open source project, or you just want to have a friendly chat with us about this, feel free to grab one of us this evening, or reach out to us on LinkedIn, and we'll find time to have a chat with you. Do we doing Q&A now or later? Later, fine. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Right, another round of applause for Oliver and David, please. Thank you. Thanks, guys. That's great. So what we'll do now is we're going to get our next speaker, Ben, set up. I think it's a good time for you to maybe grab another drink if you fancy it. No pressure, obviously. Yeah, we'll be in another 5 minutes or so. Oh, yeah, and there's a big yellow bench in front. Yeah. Oh, and oh, right, sorry. The other trip hazard is a little grate. So, yeah. Watts here, so if you could all take your seats. So Ben Watts is from Kilowatts Grid, basically a real-time open source grid visualization for Great Britain. Oh, the trip hazard. So yeah, so without further ado, I will leave it to Ben. So yeah, that's cool. And then yeah, just left and right.
Cool.
Cool.
Right, good evening, guys. Really great to be here. I'm going to talk for a bit about this app. I'm going to talk a bit about my background, what I spend most of my time doing. I'll talk a bit about the GB power market. Some of that will probably be familiar to some of you, probably not others. And then I'll talk a bit about the tech. I guess that'll probably be familiar to a slightly different group of you, and not the former. So anyway, so I'm Ben, Ben Watts. In case anyone asks, I didn't change my surname by default. But actually, quite a lot of people in my family have worked in the energy industry in different guises in the last century. So, but I'm not related to James Watt. I started my career, so I studied economics and I worked for a couple of energy consultancies in central London. I ended up kind of specializing in doing long-term power price forecasting, so kind of supporting investment decisions for big new generation projects, interconnectors, things like that. So kind of running big dispatch models, which is kind of like quite mathematical stuff. Happy to go into that a bit more detail. But I kind of enjoyed the tech and the industry, but I wanted to get better at kind of actually coding and doing that kind of stuff myself. So I quit that and kind of did a lot of boot camps and taught myself kind of front and back end software development. And I've done quite a lot of freelancing to kind of pay the bills. And now I'm kind of building stuff myself. So I'm spending most of my time at the moment doing an energy simulation tool that eventually will be able to do kind of LCOE and potentially kind of PPA pricing and that kind of thing for solar and kind of embedded on-site demand type stuff. So heat, transport, that kind of thing. So happy to chat to people about that kind of stuff if that's of interest. But yeah. And I travel up today. I live in Devon, so just outside Plymouth, middle of Dartmoor. So yeah, relatively local. But to me, like Bristol is what we call upcountry. So it's kind of, I always find it quite disconcerting when people call Bristol Southwest. It's kind of like, not, well, at least from my perspective, not quite. But anyway, we'll leave that. That's probably, yeah. So what's this app? So there are hundreds of power stations, generation units at any one point that might be generating on the GB grid. If you went back kind of 10 or 20 years, there would have been 20 or 30 power stations, which would have made the lion's share of that. These days, there are a lot more small wind farms, particularly up in Scotland. There are also a lot more interconnectors than there used to be. Until probably 10, 12 years ago, I think there was just one to France. Now there are 3, plus cables to Belgium, Netherlands, Denmark, Norway, 2 to Ireland, and a couple more in the pipeline as well. So what this app does is it shows you, and I'd encourage anyone who might be interested to take a shot of the QR code on the screen. That should open it in a web browser, and there'll be an opportunity to download it from the App Store as well. So this is a universal app. So there's a single code base for both web and mobile. I'll come on to the technical details of that in a bit, but it'll probably help if you're particularly interested to have it open on your phone. Right. So I'll give you just a quick overview of what the different symbols mean, and then I'll go on. How would I get onto the... So are we restarting it? Okay, that's done it. Cool. Right. So there are symbols for different things. Wind farms kind of obvious, and everything's scaled. So if it's bigger, it's a bigger wind farm, or it's a bigger power station, whatever. The spinning turbines are kind of color coded. So what you'll see on the screen is different from this recording, which was taken a couple of months ago. What you'll see on your screen is live now. So I happened to have a look before I started speaking, and Drax is the biggest unit on the grid at the moment. That's obviously biomass, and that's green. All the gas plants, which are kind of the mainstay of the UK grid, are orange. The nuclear ones are purple. I'm not sure if any of the pump storage hydro is running at the moment. We're probably a little bit late for that in the evening. That tends to just run for like the kind of big peak period, kind of 5, 6, 7 o'clock. But if it is, you'll probably see De Norwig kind of running in North Wales and maybe a couple of the Scottish ones. The other thing you'll see is possibly some red and green flashing lights. I'll come on to that in a bit detail to explain what that is, but that's kind of balancing actions that the grid are taking. So power stations have a planned output, and then they get moderated up and down by National Grid. That's something I'll come on to explain in a minute. But yeah, that's the app. How do I? Right. Why did I create this? So there are quite a few apps that are vaguely in this space. I like all of them, just in case anyone in the room is connected with any of these. But I wanted to do something slightly different and cut the data in a slightly different way. So the kind of typical traditional app you'll see will be a pie chart, like the National Grid Live one, the top left on the slide. And that'll just tell you kind of, there's 20% gas, there's 10% coal, there's 30% nuclear on the grid. And they all tend to come from the same data feed from National Grid, which gets updated kind of in a backward-looking way every 5 or 10 minutes. Now, in my view, that's quite an interesting snapshot, but it doesn't necessarily kind of get into the granularity of where your power is coming from, and something that's increasingly important, the kind of geographical constraints that we have on moving power within the country, and specifically from the north of England and Scotland, where there's a lot of renewables, to the south, where most of the population is. Looking at some of the other apps, I'm a big fan of the Electricity Maps app and website. That's pretty global, and you can look at live emissions intensity factors for different countries. But again, like, you can't drill down into detail of like what individual power plants are doing. And obviously it varies by app, but most of these don't give you any information on what the actual balancing of the grid is. So they'll tell you kind of what's happening, but they won't tell you why that's happening, if you see what I mean. Right. So who here is familiar with the balancing mechanism? Wow. Okay, right. So I'm going to give you an overview, and I'll try not to make any mistakes. But it sounds like the people in the audience might correct me if I get anything wrong. Okay. Well, they've just changed the rules, so that's something I can duck behind. Okay. Yeah. So there's lots of different ways of trading power in the UK. We obviously have kind of a privatized, deregulated market for trading power, and you can sell power, generators to suppliers to industrial consumers, weeks and months in advance. Some people here would be familiar with PPAs, which are a way that popular way of renewable developers, generators selling their power to the same person for the lifetime of that asset. But there are also exchanges, a bit like kind of the stock market, where there are auctions. And as you get closer to the delivery period, or the time that the actual power is going to be generated and used, the time windows tend to get more granular and more specific. So at the moment, it would be possible probably to buy a contract for kind of a constant amount of power for each hour in, say, December or January next year, or even like for the whole winter. There would be like a winter contract or a quarterly contract or a monthly contract. But on the other hand, there are also auctions kind of each morning, results of which get published with kind of half-hourly slots for the next day. So this morning there was an auction at 9 or 10 o'clock for power for delivery tomorrow. There are actually 2 auctions. I won't go into too much detail on that. And then there's an intraday market as well, where trading can continue to happen, and things evolve as demand, the weather, which obviously informs wind and solar generation, and so on, kind of turns out to be different to what was expected, and generators and electricity companies will constantly trade and change their positions, and the prices can move up and down. And all this happens kind of in a relatively kind of free market fashion until an hour before what we call the delivery period, but the time that the power is actually going to be generated and used. And at that point, National Grid asks all of the large generators to send them some information. And that information is their FPNs. FPNs are basically, what are you going to generate? And then a set of bid-offer pairs. Bid-offer pairs are basically the prices that a generator or a user of electricity would be paid or would be willing to pay National Grid to change their generation or their output level above or below what they submitted as part of the FPM. So the easy way of thinking of that is you might be a gas power plant generating at kind of half your output, and you might say to National Grid, if you want me to produce any more, then it'll be £100 a megawatt. If you want me to produce any less, I'll pay you £80. I'll come on to why that would be the case in a minute, but the general idea is that with that information, National Grid can kind of then do the fine-tuning and the balancing of the electricity market kind of on a minute-by-minute basis, and obviously make sure that supply and demand are balanced in such a way that all the lights stay on. Other thing about the balancing market, it's quite a lot more volatile than kind of the long-term markets. It's quite popular with more flexible assets like batteries, pump storage, which is a form of hydro, but it's getting more and more important. It's getting more and more important because we've got more renewables on the grid, and they're more intermittent, and they're also quite often in the wrong place. And as National Grid kind of balances the grid kind of minute by minute and turns generation units up and down, they do what we call acceptances. The acronym for that is a BALF, which is a bid offer acceptance something. But basically that's kind of them taking up a generator, taking up a supplier on one of the offers that they've made. Right. So here's an example of some data that they might send. A gas power plant will typically say, you can turn me up and you can turn me down. If you turn me down, I'll pay you, and I'll pay you because I'm not going to have to burn some gas, and I'm not going to have to buy some carbon credits to generate power. And traditionally, this is the way most of the grid was balanced most of the time. I'm going to give you an example now of probably the most common thing that happens on the grid, and probably what you will have heard about, and that's called kind of a system imbalance, and that's the system imbalance associated with renewable generation up in Scotland. There are lots of other reasons why National Grid will intervene in the balancing market and buy and sell energy. And I just want to caveat before giving you this example to kind of let you know that those do exist. So if you were to open my app, quite a lot of the time, you would see red flashing lights on the wind farms up in Scotland. And that's an indication that my app gives, which tells you that those wind farms are generating power that can't be used, typically because we just don't have the transmission capability to bring that power south. And at the same time, you'll quite often see green flashing lights on a lot of the gas power stations in the south. So in this example, which I did a couple of days ago, you can see Seabank, which some of you might know is a big gas power station at Avonmouth, being turned up. So effectively, at this point in time, National Grid were keeping the grid in balance by turning down wind generation in Scotland and turning up gas generation in the south. That's obviously expensive, it's undesirable, it's bad for the environment, but sadly it's what happens and is going to continue to happen until we can build some more transmission infrastructure in this country. So that's the app. I'm going to talk a little bit about the tech in it. I appreciate this probably appeals to a slightly different group of people. And then after that, if anyone has any questions, then feel free to ask. So this is a React Native app. React Native is possibly something you've never heard of, but it's an open source framework originally released by Meta, Facebook, and which enabled them to use a single code base for the WhatsApp app, for Instagram, Facebook Messenger. These days it's used by most of the big tech firms. Amazon are massive users of it these days. The nice thing about it is you don't have to learn Apple-specific code or Apple-specific languages. You don't have to learn Android-specific languages. You write code in JavaScript. You can run it in a web browser. You can also run it on both iOS and on Android. So I managed to write one code base and submit that to both the app stores and put the website, the app, onto the internet as well, which is, you know, when you're working on something largely on your own, like I have a couple of other contributors who've helped me out, but when you're working on something largely on your own, that's a massive time saver. And there's a small backend as well. The backend just collects data from some of the third-party APIs that obviously drive this. So there's a National Grid API. There's a National Grid API, and then there's Alexon, which is kind of a subsidiary, like an arm's length company associated with National Grid that run and facilitate and administrate power trading in this country. And the back end collects data from that, scrapes it, and puts it in a neat kind of little bucket on the internet from which the app can access it. And the data updates every minute, and it's kind of forward-looking. So each minute, it looks at all the acceptances and all the trading actions that have happened on the grid. It aggregates all the outputs for each of the individual power stations, and it presents them on the map. Sometimes there are outages that are outside my control, and when that happens, like, the app will give you an error message. But yeah, that's it. And the code is available on GitHub. And yeah, if anyone's interested in contributing or helping with the app, kind of curious about maybe adding new geographies, adding some demand data, adding smaller units, possibly having some kind of element of time travel or kind of historic aggregations, that kind of thing. And I appreciate there might be some people in this room who are not necessarily full stack, but perhaps like more kind of back-end data focused, kind of with some experience in energy markets, or more kind of front-end, maybe React Native focused. And there probably are slightly different things that might appeal to both those different groups. Yeah, if anyone's interested in that, or has a friend or someone who might be, then please put them in touch with me. If you can download and give me a nice review on an app store, that's very nice. But yeah, other than that, yeah, that's it. So I'll probably leave it there. And thanks for your time. Yeah, of course. Sorry.
Sorry, no, ask it. Right, so we're going to do a quick Q&A. Yes, so can we unplug anything?
Okay.
But it's not necessary, otherwise we can
Come on, yeah.
Yep. Great stuff. Two fantastic talks. So yeah, thank you very much for both of those. We will take questions from the room. Is it working? Yeah, cool. And also hopefully some from home as well. So if you have a question, unfortunately the microphone doesn't quite reach. So if you don't mind coming up and asking it to either one of the guys, that'd be great. Yeah, just there.
So my question is about the word standard and carbon standard, because a British standard to me means.
Excuse me,
could you Oh, right, this one as well. Yeah. So a British standard to me means that there's been a lot of collaboration between universities, government, industry, consultants, product managers. Maybe I missed the part where you talk about who else worked with the standard, because it sounds like it should be like a tech carbon hub, like a resource for information, and not a standard.
Is there a mic for us, or
Do you want this one?
Really great point, and I probably missed the part proposed. No. We ideally what we'd love is for something like the GHG protocol to come along and say, yeah, let's adopt this as an annex of the GHG protocol. So we wanted to be quite bold and ambitious and say we need a standard in the tech industry. It's not enough to say it's a hub or it's a place we can. Yeah, we need to agree a standard. Now, if someone wants to come on, come a bet on, sure, we'll happily. And there's a reason it's open source, and it's the reason why we're looking for collaborators. So we're doing this in the open. It is labeled proposed on the website. I should have said it very much has the health warning proposed because it's new. We are collaborating with a number of our clients and with not-for-profits like Green Software Foundation and Green Web Foundation and other people. So totally take that point. But what I would say is, if people want to get involved, then they're very welcome to get involved. And if someone comes up with something better, or if GHG come up with some better standards around tech emissions, then amazing. But right now there's a huge gap, and it's left down to the individual organisation to decide how honest and transparent do they really want to be about their tech stack. Because at the moment there is so much vague, it allows for so much vagueness around how you report your technology estate, because there's no standards. So we need a standard. That's why we call it standard, or proposed standard.
Would have been useful to have groups that make standards, like British standards.
No, totally. And I'm actually been invited by the IEEE to go to the States. Annoyingly, I'm going to have to buy carbon guilt triggers. But the IEEE have approached me and asked me to present at their event because the IEEE are interested in backing it. So if the IEEE get behind it, I think that issue of a standards body being behind it probably goes away very quickly.
Great stuff. Thanks, Ollie. Any other questions from the room? If you don't mind coming up. Yeah, thank you. Just hold that one as well.
Hi, this is for Ollie. I liked your thing. It's good. I guess I had two questions. One is whether there was anything you found surprising in the analysis that you did. So, like, was there an unexpected outcome where you're kind of like, oh, I wouldn't have thought that's where the emissions would mostly be, or that's where the most leverage is. That's easiest to change. That was one thing. And the other thing was, I like the diagrams. Can you put a scale bar on them? Like a small box that's like, this is one person's typical emissions per year or something. That was it.
Thank you. Yeah, no, sorry, remind me the first question again? Oh, the first question.
Most surprising thing that you found.
Yeah, the most surprising, I think, for us was the amount of embodied carbon plays. And I guess it was initially surprising, but I think it's because it's one of those hidden things that's outside. And one of the reasons digging into it, that the embodied carbon is so high, is because typically the parts of the world that produce our hardware and our devices tend to have very high carbon intensity. So if you look at the averages of China, and other parts of the world where they're producing our products, it's approaching like a kilogram of CO2 per kilowatt hour. You'll come to correct on that. That's slightly
no, I'm astounded it's that high. But I believe you.
It's at least 800 grams. It's there's a lot of coal generation in China, right? So it's coming down. They're investing a lot in renewables. I think the biggest growth in wind generation is in China, is my understanding from what I've read recently, but have to be corrected again by somebody who's got better data. But it's because there's a lot of emissions in where those factories are, and also in the transportation of those goods around the world to get to you in the first place. So there's a huge impact in the purchased goods that we have, and this is an inconvenient truth. It's the real elephant in the room of our current economy. And I try not to stray into politics too much here, but there is an issue with our current model where we have to buy. And unfortunately, that drives consumption, and it drives us to buy a lot of kind of carbon as a result. So that was a big surprise. And I think for servers, it's different though. For servers, it's still the usage, because you sweat a server typically for many years, ideally many years, and therefore the balance is more in the usage of the server than it is in its production. But that was probably the biggest surprises. Yeah, in terms of visualization, that's one of the reasons we presented tonight. Actually, what we're really keen to hear actually is more feedback. Because what we want to make sure is that we get the visualization right, because it needs to be clear, it needs to be obvious. David and I, we bounced around various ideas. We had an idea of using a cube, but we decided that's a bit too complicated, it's a bit too confusing. So we've gone back down to 2D squares that grow or shrink depending on the size. I really like the suggestion though of the reference to like, what does that mean? Because otherwise, what's it relative to? So but it's a balance, because what we don't want people to do is take the figures that this thing generates and goes, oh great, I've got my footprint now, I've got my you know, my reporting, but technology's done. But no, it's just an indication, it's just a rough guide. So we don't want to give people too many numbers, because we don't want them to think it's like a fully robust reporting mechanism. It's not.
It shouldn't be a standard, actually.
Well, no, that's
questions. We can chat at the pod after.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. They're two different things though. Right? The standard is the taxonomy, and the estimator tool is a different thing. So it's building on the same taxonomy, but it's not the same. So just to make that point. Yeah.
Great stuff, thank you. Any other questions from the room? If you don't mind coming up. I think you just got there first, sorry.
You're getting all the questions tonight on this tech carbon standard. In your diagram, you related it to the scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, and you kind of opened motivating it, saying that there's a lot of press around green computing is around whether or not it's running green electricity or not, and that's clearly not the whole picture. But scope 1, 2, and 3 should already be the whole picture. Like if an organization has a robust scope 3 footprint, why would they separately want a specifically tech-focused footprint in your taxonomy? Because like a scope 3 would already pull in the like upstream and downstream emissions, and like maybe your taxonomy brings in some nice concepts around like actually thinking about upstream software emissions, for example. I don't know if that would get missed in normal scope 3 reporting, but yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think you're right. There are the scopes. The problem we found is there's lots of ambiguity in what you report in scope 3 as part of technology. Do you include end user devices? Do you not? Do you include third-party services or not? So what we wanted to do was map out the whole space from top to bottom, left to right, such that then organizations have that complete picture. Now they can then choose how transparent do they want to be, quite frankly, because let's take bring your own device. Bring your own device is something that David and I were discussing the other day. It's a really tricky issue, and it comes down to how much of that device probably is used for work versus used for the individual. And as an organization, you can go, I'm not going to include any of that because it's not my device. Or you could choose, actually, no, I'm going to include a fraction of the embodied carbon of that because I accept that it's being used for work purposes as 20% of its usage, for example. So there is lots of ambiguity and vagueness around this, and we have to discuss it. It's clearly nowhere near being a formal thing that you could use to report against yet. We need more collaboration and we need more contribution. But we just found there was such a lack of agreement even on what parts of the estate you should report under what areas. And we wanted just something easier that helped the different stakeholders in the room come around a table and just agree what are you reporting and how, and then signposting to useful open source tools or other tools that are out there that can help you collect the data or have an agreed metric or agreed standard for reporting that part of the technology landscape.
GHG3 is often done. Just to add to that, GHG scope 3 is often and accepted to be double counted. That's GHG8, even quote that, like that is a common thing to happen, and they accept it. So yeah, if you're counting your embodied carbon of a laptop, but it's already been accounted for somewhere else by the producer, doesn't matter. It can still be counted.
Great stuff, thank you very much. Is there any question for Ben before getting to the others? Yeah, if you want to come up. Sorry, I think you just got there first. Oh, okay, great.
Go online first? Or no, first. Then I was wondering about your app, Kilowatts, where, if you have any dreams, where the app goes or where it takes you, like if there's any hopes and aspirations.
So
So I think there's two answers to that, because I showed you the open source kind of grid visualization app. Like, I'd like to hopefully collaborate with people to try and make that a bit better over time and draw out kind of more real-time information. In terms of like the main focus of my company and other apps, like you know, my kind of main passion is investment analysis, simulation, helping people basically make better decisions about how they invest in energy infrastructure, whether that's solar, EV, heating, and kind of the integration of those things together. Like, so that's kind of where the main focus of what I'm doing is, and kind of what I'm passionate about, really, because it's complex. There's lots of money involved, and people kind of need to make the right decisions, really. So yeah.
Great stuff. Thank you. Can we have the online question for Ben?
Do you want to read it out?
Yeah, go on.
Sorry, it's a long one.
Quite long, isn't it? What Ben has created is a great example of taking data from a system, the energy system, that is open to most people not working in the industry, but has a phenomenal influence upon averting total climate disaster. Do either of the speakers have any ideas as to how we can use tech to make the energy system more accessible to people, to more people? Or are there other opaque systems that are highly influential in addressing the climate crisis that would benefit from a tech interface to make them more accessible?
I love that question.
Do you want to take it first or me?
Well, in a way, I had a question for you, Ben, that kind of relates to that anyway, which is, because Hannah and I and David actually were recording podcasts about carbon aware and grit, and what Hannah's. Yeah. Sorry. So the reason I love this question is it feels like what you've presented tonight offers part of the solution to what technologists need, because what we've been talking about is how the tech industry is talking a lot about carbon aware, but that's an oversimplification, because they're often looking at the carbon intensity of a country and going, just run your server workload in that country at this point in time because it looks cleaner. The reality is the grid is far more nuanced than that, as your app shows. There's curtailment, there's balancing, there's various other things going on. And so I guess the interesting thing I think that this question poses is there an opportunity to allow the electricity system to be easier for software developers to understand, such that they can then schedule their workloads to run in places where there is power available, but it's being curtailed. So for example, it would be great to run more workloads in Scotland when there's wind power, but right now there isn't a good, easy way of developers knowing that that's the case, other than maybe looking at the carbon intensity figures. But I think your app potentially offers a gateway into that. Well, it's probably for us to take offline, given your facial expressions at me, but I'm very excited by it because I think it potentially offers a bridge into the developer community to understand when they should be running workloads when there's available clean energy.
Yeah, I think I think I'd also say that, like, the more over time, more and more people are generating their own power, and you know, whether that's on-site solar or whether that's you know, a private wire connection to a wind farm or something like that, and particularly, you know, some of the big Amazon, Google kind of data centers in Ireland and places like that, like, you know, you would probably get a slightly misleading view of their emissions if you looked at the Irish grid, because they've got a private, you know, connection to a wind farm or something like that. So actually, you know, I'm not trying to do down my own app and you know, the grid, but actually it's getting more and more complicated over time. And as you say, even kind of within the country, like, you know, there'll be a single emission figure for the UK or for GB, but actually the reality is in Scotland that it's nearly always better than that. So yeah, it's complicated, unfortunately. You know, yeah, but it's exciting, and there's lots of opportunities, and you know, there's lots of ways to improve things as well. So yeah, happy to talk about that to anyone that's
great stuff. Thank
you.
you.
Second part of that question, I'd like to just quickly
go for it. Yeah.
So they also asked about what other sort of opaque systems are out there. And I think for me, this is touched on in the Branch magazine contribution I submitted. For me, what I'd love to see is we have exchanges like financial stock exchanges for material goods, but they tend to be virgin materials like gold exchanges and so on and so forth. What would be amazing for me is that as a technology community, we start to, and as a business community, we start to build circular economy exchanges so that people that have waste products can be matched, demand and supply of waste production can be matched with people that need that, they could use that as a source material for their processes. So that could be waste heat, it could be waste plastic, it could be anything, but that's the systems that I think we really need to start tapping into.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. Yeah, okay, Ben.
I think I said this in my talk, but most of the data comes from the brand new Elexon, it's called the Insights data service API, and it's made accessing the data, which I've used, a lot easier than it used to be. There's been a lot of investment in it in the last 6 months. And obviously you can dig through my source code and look at how I used it if you want to, as an example. But their kind of playground and their website is quite good as well. And there's a graph tool as well. If anyone's interested in trying to understand, how that market works, it's interesting to have a play around with, or at least in my opinion it is. Anyway, yeah.
Thank you. We've got time for one more. Yeah, one more. One more question from the room. I think I've been overlooking this gentleman for a while.
Hi, Ben. Yeah, I'd like to compare on different tariff providers the different emissions in electricity generation and transmission. Is there any chance we could get anywhere near that?
So who your supplier buys their power from is, in theory at least, separate from what's on the grid, because certain suppliers will go out into the market and buy more kind of renewables broadly than others. There is reporting from suppliers in terms of what their kind of market share and split is like.
But it's like 12 months out of date generally.
Oh, okay. I think there are definitely a couple, particularly the ones that are kind of slightly more innovative and in the renewable space and quite techy, that just have 100% kind of carte blanche. We're kind of 100% renewable kind of guarantee. I might not say them over the microphone, but if they're not obvious, I definitely tell you after the talk.
They have tentacles, right?
Yeah, tentacles. Yeah, not 9 and 11. Yeah. I mean, there is one in Bristol as well.
Yeah.
I guess is 100% renewable.
Those ones are easy. It's all the others that.
Yeah, I mean, I would slightly caution. Like, I think you're doing something better by buying something that's 100% renewable. But I kind of, it's still better if you use more power overnight, and when the grid's kind of greener. I don't think, like, you're probably not that kind of person, but I don't think you just buy from Octopus or Ovo and say, well, that's my job done. Like, I think there's still more kind of engagement from the consumer needed if you want to kind of, reduce your impact as much as possible, or as much as sensibly possible. Yeah, happy to talk to you a bit more afterwards.
Can you squeeze one more in? We're done. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Ben and Oliver. A round of applause for fielding those questions. Yeah, 2 fantastic talks. Thank you very much. We will be gathering up all the slides, all the comments from the chat, any resources that have been mentioned, some pictures. Have I missed something? No. Well, everything over the next day or so, usually 1 to 2 days. And obviously, if you want to grab either of the speakers in the next few minutes whilst we pack down and tidy up, then feel free. And I'm sure we'll put their LinkedIn information as well, so if you want to get in touch. But we will be drawing this event to a close, and we're going off to the left-handed giant. So Tariq, if you put your hand in the air. He is the Pied Piper. So yeah, if whenever you finish your drinks, we will meet you over there. We're going to just tidy up here. But yeah, just lastly, thank you very much for giving up your evenings and supporting us again. We'll be back in 2 months. And yeah, thank you again to our amazing speakers and Scottlogic for hosting us.